Morning. Gonna listen to a video I've already listened to. Most of it anyway. Right, bear with me one second. I'm going to stop that music now. Much as I enjoy listening to it. Right, you can see on screen, I'll put a link in the side chat. I won't be reading side chat comments. I'm just going to listen to this video here. Oh, by the way, Kevin streamed that last discussion with me to his channel, and he got 1,200 views. I'm pretty chuffed about that, actually. I'm not worried about getting massive amounts of views on my channel. I did listen to part of this one. He did this Colossians part 5. What was it? Oh, yesterday, 16 hours ago. I'm going to copy the title and then put a link to it. I'm not keen on that notepad app there because it makes the text too big. I'll use it anyway. I'm gonna find a better notepad thingy. I watched hundreds of Kevin's videos. I learn something every time. I'm not saying that to be clever. Like, all I'm saying is I do actually learn something every time in one way or another, or it gives me a sort of line of thought about stuff. If you're not interested in Kevin Thompson, that's fine. You know, there are other channels you can go to. Because of certain things that have been said by them, I'm not, I don't have an attitude towards them. Idol Killer said he's extremely ecumenical. I'm not. I won't go to Leighton Flowers because, well, provisionism, really. I don't despise provisionists. They're entitled to follow somebody else's line of reasoning if they want their so-called defense mechanism, and I think it is a bit mechanistic. But I've got no time for provisionism, actually. Who else? Yeah, I wouldn't send you to Leighton Flowers. It's up to you. I mean, if you like listening to Leighton Flowers, fine, fair enough. I'm not going to whinge about it. I like the Calvinist contradiction. He's very good, actually, because he just reads scripture from certain chapters and refutes Calvinism from there, because Calvinism actually has no proof text, as it were, in the KJV. Right, I'm going to play this now. Yeah, I think I caught the last hour and 20 minutes of this. I can't remember. Sometimes it does take a bit to get going. Just going to Rumble to put a link in the side chat. Yeah, a little bit slow sometimes, but they. I just got booted out of my own StreamYard. I'm going to delete that tab at Rumble. Just keep the one tab open. I can do it a different way. Colossians part 5, it's linked in the side chat. If I get kicked out of studio, I'll be back within a minute and a half. Okay. Don't worry about commenting. You won't end up on a list. Or maybe you will. I don't know. Here we go.
Good morning. Welcome to Beyond the Fundamentals. So today we're in Colossians part 5. And so we've done 4 previous sessions. This is week number 5 of live streaming sessions in Colossians at 11 a.m. on Sundays. So if you haven't seen the previous sessions, it's okay, but we highly encourage you to go catch up. On our website, beyondthefundamentals.com, there is a banner which will take you to our Colossians series page. And on that page, you'll see links to the previous videos, and you will see links to the PDFs and PowerPoints of all the slides that we are showing in these videos, using as our visual aids. They are for free. So you can actually go download the PowerPoint slides yourselves, use them for your own studies, for your own small groups, whatever you want to use them for. Modify them, edit them, do whatever you want with them. And that is for free. Now, as the series progresses, they will not continue to be available for free. So make sure you get them for free while you can, okay? Because we're going to shift into putting everything on Etsy at some point in the future. So the stuff is free right now, okay? So apparently Roberta, who lives in Texas, thinks that the Cowboys are going to put a smackdown on the Saints today. Dak versus Derek. And all I can say is that we shall see. We shall see. And I'm looking forward to that. Today is the 5S Sunday that Paula and I enjoy, and I won't get into what all of those are, but some of them are steak and some of them are the Saints. As you can see, I'm representing with my shirt today. Herbert asks, how was the storm? Any problems? So I was actually live on the channel KJV only, or King _ James _ only. I was on his page, Bob's page, and he shows up here every once in a while in the comment section. I was on his page, I think Wednesday night. We didn't do FSI that night, and the hurricane was coming through, and we had we talked about whether or not Platonism has been infiltrating Christianity. It'd be very interesting to watch. You can go back and watch that. So yeah, we did fine in the storm. Got everything cleaned back up, no damage that we know of, so that's good. And I appreciate the concern. Storm came and went. And I appreciate this too. Highly encouraged. Been great stuff already. Yeah, I think he's talking about with regard to the previous sessions on Colossians. Okay, so by all means, and like Today is the Day says, tap the like button for sure. So on this channel, if you're new, we'll go through a couple things real quick. If you like what you get on this channel, you want to see it continue, feel free to donate to the cause. We could not do this without you. We have a page, beyondthefundamentals.com. Click on the donate tab in the menu section, and it will take you to where there's 5 different ways to contribute to this channel using Zelle, PayPal, Wise, Venmo, or Cash App. If you'd like to see what's happening here continue, if you appreciate what's happening, you appreciate the effort that goes into it. There's a lot of videos I'm not making right now because I have to focus so much on the Colossians series that it would take bandwidth away from what we're doing on Sundays in order to produce other kinds of content. And I think this is so serious and it's so compelling. I'm learning things that I did not see before, and I'm so excited to share them with you. If you like to see this kind of thing, consider supporting us. We really appreciate that. Appreciate everybody who already does, makes it possible, and helps keep it free. I don't monetize these while they're live. We turn on the monetization afterwards to help try to pay the bills and things like that. So thanks to everybody who can help keep some of this stuff free to everyone, and hope that continues and increases so that we can increase what we're doing here. I'm juggling a job and all kinds of other things as well as everybody else is. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. We try to announce everything we're doing on those places. So if you follow us there, you'll be notified when we're going live. Our approach toward Jesus Christ is the way Scripture presents Jesus Christ, is that he is the way. He's the way, he's the truth, he's the life. Jesus says in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and life. He never says, I am a set of beliefs. He never says, I am a systematic theology. You should reduce me to a set of propositions that you can systematize and then use that as a basis of normativity to create your little institutional in-groups. He never says that. And Jesus is giving the Beatitudes. He never says, blessed are those who have the correct beliefs. He never says that. So our approach here is that Jesus is the way, and those who are constructing an image of God or an image of metaphysical reality with pertaining to things about God out of words are just as guilty of idolatry as those who do so out of wood or gold, make their idols out of those things. Constructing a false image of God, out of a reductive false image of God out of these kinds of things is not good. So we're following Christ as the way, not as a set of beliefs. It doesn't mean that we don't have beliefs, but that's not the end state. The end state is your capacity, your consciousness, and your fluency, your capacity to bring it, your capacity to love, increasing so that you can provide more affordance of choice for others is what we're dealing with here. The product is you. In regular Christianity that you go to today, the product is something like this, and if you don't conform to it, you're not part of the group. Here, what we think Scripture's product is, the product of proper scriptural approach, is a better you, a transformed you, a you that is more like Christ, a you that can love better than you did before. Thanks to Richard for the super chat. Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate that. That really helps. So thanks for the super chat. Also, we recognize in Scripture, and I'm letting you know what our approach is that we see the command to love as being lifted above all other things very, very clearly in 1 Corinthians 13. Well, I just missed that, didn't I? Very, very clearly in 1 Corinthians 13, we are given a clear comparison of, faith, hope, and love. And love, charity, agape, comes out on top. Very clear comparison. And it's very interesting that our churches have statements of faith, but not statements of charity. Why don't we elevate these things? And charity, the way charity works is it's not clean, it's not efficient, it's not top down, it's not outside in, and it's inside out. It's slow, it looks inefficient. One of the reasons that many Christians today don't actually believe in love as a practice when it comes down to where the rubber meets the road. So even in Colossians, the book that we're studying, above all these things, put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. Love is the fulfilling of the law. The end of the commandment, or how we would say in the military, the desired end state of everything that I'm telling you, is charity out of a pure heart and of a good conscience and of faith unfeigned. Charity of faith unfeigned, if you will. Charity is the end state. Now, charity and wisdom come together, and that's one of the things that we're going to look at today. Okay, so we see Jesus Christ as the way, and we see that the highest elevated thing is charity, agape love, and the definition of love that we're tending to go with mostly is love is that which enables choice. Love is that which affords choice, the affordance of choice. Okay. In other words, when you interact with somebody, the result of that interaction is that they have a greater degree of choices. Okay, I'll give you an example of this. If I am in a very serious discussion with my wife, okay, if I react out of ego and my limbic system and out of anger, and I say something that I shouldn't say, the number of choices that I have now for where that conversation can go is now greatly diminished. Okay. And now I haven't afforded choice to myself. I have narrowed and failed to afford choice to my spouse, my wife. So, but if I could somehow learn how to control my limbic system, my limbic reactions, and be less attached to the things that I might feel are threatened by the discussion that we're having, I might be able to answer in a way like Proverbs 15:1 says, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. Well, that soft answer can provide a lot of choice for where we can go from here, whereas, stirring up anger might reduce the amount of choices that we have. Now, that's just one conversation. And this bleeds into everything. Like if you love yourself, not in the sense that you're narcissistic and egoic, but in the sense that you take care of yourself as if you're someone who needs to be taken care of, you will get enough sleep, you will eat right, you will exercise right, and then when life happens, you have the resilience physically and bodily to endure that, or to be chosen for certain things, to go do things. You want to go on a hike. Oh, well, no, I'm too fat and lazy and I hurt my leg and my knees aren't good. Well, if you were taking better care of yourself, maybe you could go on that hike and maybe you would make a connection with the person you're with and enjoy nature and have some kind of wonderful experience, but you no longer have that choice available to you because you're not taking care of yourself. So when we say affordance of choice, we're not talking about menu options like A, B, C, and D. What we're talking about is setting yourself up for success so that whatever life throws your way, you are more likely to be able to respond in a positive way than you could before. So love does that kind of thing for yourself and for everyone that you interact with if applied appropriately. Well, so what is appropriate? That's where wisdom comes in. So what we're putting forward today in Paul's transformation model, this is completely hypothetical, and this is mainly conjecture on my part, okay? But I think that Paul is putting love as a capacity, as a prerequisite for wisdom cultivation. And once you have love as a capacity and you are headed for wisdom, okay, then you're constantly mixing those two together. Like, you may want to afford choice, but then the thing that you do winds up limiting choice because you lacked wisdom. So love by itself without wisdom can be well intended, but like our video we did probably a couple of years ago on heart, will, and mind, you might intend to do well, but you're not smart enough to have to see the unintended consequences of the action that you're about to take. Okay. Or maybe you're not relating well enough to the people that you need to work with in order to help make this happen, because it requires more than one person. There's no coordination capability there. All kinds of reasons why wanting to bring something to pass and the ability to make that thing come to pass are two very different things. We want to be pressing toward the mark. So what does that mark look like? And I encourage you to start with simple things, like maybe I can have a serious discussion with my spouse and not react egoically or angrily. Maybe that's something you can press toward. So how can you press toward that? What can you do to hit that mark? Have some marks. Wisdom is personified in Proverbs chapter 8. And wisdom, I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, personified as a woman. And find out knowledge of witty inventions. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the froward mouth do I hate. Counsel is mine, sound wisdom. I am understanding. I have strength. By me kings reign, and princes decree justice. By me princes rule, and nobles, even all the judges of the earth. I love them that love me, and they that seek me early shall find me. So wisdom must be sought. So to seek wisdom and to love wisdom, lado, Sophia. Sophia is wisdom in Greek, philosophia. That's where the word philosophy comes from. And there are two different kinds of philosophy. There is a world's philosophy, outside in, top down, power, efficiencies, Alexander Great kind of philosophy, Alexander the Great kind of philosophy, modernism kind of philosophy, industrialism kind of philosophy, ideological possession kind of philosophy, churches with statements of faith kind of philosophy. And then there's God's wisdom, which is very, very different and not visibly efficient at first. But at the end, love is what conquers all. It's the only thing. It is the only thing that conquers all. And as long as we're setting it aside to do things more efficiently than love will do it, we will always wind up losing in the end. And if you don't think so, if you die peacefully on your bed thinking you've done well, but you set love aside, the affordance of choice, then your kids and your grandkids will be paying for it when you're resting peacefully in your grave. I'm telling you this. I'm not just running my mouth when I'm telling you this. You have to get that. You have to know that, okay? Let's move forward. I want something miserably at that recently. I'm not going to review a whole lot from our previous sessions, except for this last session. We did look at a model that Paul has that I think Paul has kind of growth, and we're going to dig a little bit more into this concept today, where you can start off down here with love as an intention, and ultimately you want to get to love as a motivation, as a capacity. So down here you can have it as an intention and a motivation, but you don't know what's going on. But then you have it as a capacity. I actually can afford choice. And in that, I have wisdom above this, but that is where wisdom and love kind of commingle together, emergence and emanations. They're coming in together. You got to have wisdom and love together. And I know this is too small, you can't see this, but this is out of Romans 5, our golden chain of charity. And then you're moving up, where you have faith, hope, and love, and you're getting to the point where you want to have the cultivation of wisdom. Now, I want to say this, and it may not sit well with you. It may not sit well with you. But I'm going to suggest this. I just want you to think about this. Remember, I'm just a guy sharing a perspective. I'm not your pastor. I'm not any kind of clergy. I'm not between you and God. I'm just sharing a perspective. And if you want to wad it up and throw it in the trash can, go ahead. There's Bob right there. We were just talking about our live stream just a few minutes ago. So go to his page and check out our live stream when you get a chance. So remember, I'm just sharing a perspective. And here's what I want you to think about. Here's the thing that I want you to think about. And that is this. I don't think any of Paul's audiences are post-wisdom. I think they're all pre-wisdom, as far as I can tell. In other words, there are no written audiences in Paul's epistles that have embodied wisdom. They seem to all be on the precipice of it and needing it. There are some that are capable of love and are ready for wisdom cultivation. And then there are some that still need to get to the love part, and they can't. So when Paul is throwing around these words like faith, hope, and love, and you can look at 1 Corinthians and look at all these words they're throwing around. You got faithful, thanks, praying, faith, love, hope, truth, fruit, good, truth, love, pray, wisdom, walk, patience, joyfulness, light. So it just kind of seems like a bunch of really nice things to say, really wonderful things. You want to have faith and hope and love. It almost sounds like throwaway words. I don't think they're that way at all. Okay, I don't think they're that way at all. I think if you compare everything Paul writes and consider the audiences to whom he's writing, you would ask a question like this: observation, inductive method. To what does he attribute to this audience? And what do you mean by that? When he's talking to an audience, does he attribute faith to them? Does he attribute love to them? Does he attribute wisdom to them? Ask that question. And so in this case, we see that Paul does attribute love to them. See that? Right there in Colossians 1:4. And he attributes love to them here, but he does not attribute wisdom to them. He says, now I'm going to pray for you that you can get some wisdom. So what that tells me is that love as a capacity is a prerequisite for wisdom cultivation. And notice he's going to pray for this. Notice that wisdom, and we're going to look at the prayers of Paul in Ephesians and Colossians. And we're going to notice that Paul prays for them to get something that he can't just tell them in a letter. See, if this kind of Christianity was biblical Christianity, then Paul would not bother writing these short letters and then praying for them to get the wisdom. If it was something that could be written down and systematized into words, Paul would have given us something like this. He never does that. Never does that. Why? Why? Because trying to do this is not what anybody in Scripture is trying to do. This and this, doesn't matter which one. Okay? You got your Calvinism, you got your provisionism. Doesn't matter which one. They're both profane. They're both profane because that is not categorically what Scripture is, the product of what interfacing with Scripture is supposed to be. Interfacing with Scripture is not supposed to produce a list of things like that. And so Paul is praying for something, for them to get some kind of capacity that he cannot just spell out in prose. Can't just write it out like this. Even Solomon, when he's writing about wisdom, he has to put it into some kind of narrative. You've got Lady Wisdom, I wisdom, dwell with prudence. See, it's not something you can just put like in an instruction manual, okay? In technical language. It's not that kind of thing. You know, we've heard people distinguish between like technical language, operational language, family language, relationship language. It's all English, okay? And you could go on and on, spiritual language. And each one of these would be something different. Like if I'm at work trying to press for, cybersecurity remediation and compliance with the people that I work with, that conversation is going to be very much different than a conversation that I'm going to have with my wife on the way home from some friend's house. See, it's very different kind of conversation, very different language used, still English, but very different kind of language used nonetheless. Kyle says, systematics produce top-down philosophers, i.e. folks that operate much like Pharisees, right? So there is a wisdom, if you will, to the Pharisaical stuff, but it's not what we're going for here. It's not what we're going for. And even good philosophy can get in the hands of an imposter. And you need to understand the concept of an imposter. I want to do a separate session on an imposter, okay? But briefly, and maybe Roberta can make a clip out of this. What do I mean by imposter? And imposter, let's say there's a view from the top of the mountain that is just amazing, okay? And you can describe the view from the top of the mountain, but it's very hard to get to the top of the mountain. And so let's say there's 100 people that climb up to the top of the mountain and see the view, and they can describe it. But there's one guy who's not one of the 100. He is not willing to put forth the time and effort to go up to the top of the mountain. But as each person comes down the mountain, he interviews them. Says, what was it like up there? What's the top of the mountain like? What's the footing like? What's the terrain like? What's the view like? What did you see when you were there? Which direction was that in? It gets all these details. It's all these details, all this information from what the view is like from the top of the mountain. And he interviews all 100 people. And he collects all this information. And then he studies it, learns it, memorizes it, is able to paraphrase it. And he like really knows. So now let's say this. If you've ever seen the game show To Tell the Truth. Now you go and talk to all 101 people, and you don't know which one didn't make it to the top, which one is the imposter. And they're all going to talk about it as if they've been there. They're all going to talk about it as if they've been there. Now, you talk to all 100 people, and your job is to spot the one who did not actually see the view from the top of the mountain, who did not actually make the trip, but who simply systematized, categorized, and can regurgitate back out to you what he heard from the other 100 people. Could you spot that person? Do you think there would be something in your body that would let you know that, yes, everything this person's saying is true? There is a house with an orange roof off to the northeast over here. There is a beautiful beach over here that you can see off to the left. And there is a power, whatever it is that's up there. All the things that he's saying is true. But there's something in your body that's letting you know that something's not right. You see? And so that's it. When the other people talk about the view, it's coming from what they've actually seen. When this fool talks about the view, he's an imposter. He's talking about what other people have seen. What has happened in Christianity that we are facing today is that Christianity is basically nearly 100% imposters. It's all imposters. And very few people have seen anything, and those who have seen something, they don't get along with the imposters very well. All the in-groups are made up of imposters, and those who actually have seen something do not fit in with the in-groups, and they get ostracized. That's why you find out sometimes some of these folks who have seen something, who have had an encounter with God, they wind up going off by themselves and living by themselves because all of the imposters just aren't going to have it. So here's the problem. The problem is when you start laying out what growth and transformation looks like, it's kind of impossible to do so without generating imposters. So what you're looking for is a crossover error rate. What do you mean by that? What's a crossover error rate? Like, let's say you're developing some kind of facial recognition to get into a phone or something like that. What you want is the highest number of true positives and the lowest number of false positives, right? You don't want it to look at your face and be like, I don't recognize you. Okay, that's a false negative. Well, because it really is you. And you don't want it to look at somebody else's face and think that it is you. That's a false positive. So how do you minimize the false positives and the false negatives? And the point at which you minimize both of them, and you can't minimize any of them either more without making the other one go up, that's what you call the crossover error rate. Okay? And so everything that's trying to discern, like in machine learning, everything that's trying to discern something is trying to find that crossover error rate where the minimal number of errors in either direction are absolutely minimized as much as can possibly be. There is no 100% lack of errors. There's always some kind of errors there, but they're trying to get to the minimal crossover error rate, what you're aiming for. And so when it comes to us, how do we, because we're communicating in propositions, how do we do this in a way that does not generate imposters? Because as long as you're using propositions to say the things that have been seen and to help people come along in their growth and to create a scaffolding and a way for them to structure their growth and know what to expect, as soon as you say it, anybody else can say what you just said without having embodied what is actually coming from you, having been to the top of the mountain. So this is a real problem. And I was talking with, my buddy Christian DeSalvo the other day. He's been on this channel, and we actually generate a lot of insights about some of this stuff and things that are concerning that need to be addressed. And one of them is that how do we create the transmission of growth and transformation toward Christians who want to grow and transform without creating imposters or with having a acceptable margin of crossover error rate? Because right now, there's a whole bunch of imposters, very few people who have actually seen the view from the mountain. And how do we change that around? How do we change that around? Because as soon as you say something, people can virtue signal that they are the thing and just repeat what you said. And now it's a matter of discernment to determine who's just saying the words and who is using words to describe what's coming from the inside out. Two very different things. This is imposter. This is imposter. It's all just words. What experience with God have they had? I don't know. How would you interview a person? What came to mind when you took in the site? Experiential questions would need to take over the interview. Yeah, so how do you interview a person? That's a really good thing. How do you interview a person that to assess whether or not they see? Now, when it comes to what we do here with growth and transformation, I will say this: when it comes to the comment section, the live chat's usually been a lot better lately than it has been in the past. So live chat's pretty good, but in the comment section, I can tell in one sentence whether or not somebody has seen the thing or whether or not they're in virtue signaling word space. One sentence. Told somebody recently, and sometimes I'm kind of mean about this, but it's just, honestly, it gets tedious for me after dealing with just hundreds and hundreds of commenters who it's all words, it's all impostering. And how do you get them? Yeah, they can repeat all the correct words, and you understand the difficulty of this? So last week we talked about the concept of your growth is more like, instead of you pressing forward, it is more like somebody ahead of you. Your future self is ahead of you, pulling you forward. There's something like that going on, and envisioning that is helpful as you move forward in your transformation stance. We defined love, and love is not just compassion, empathy, desire, affection, or attachment. Okay, you wind up with the Oedipus complex with that kind of thing. Okay. Love, these kinds of things can actually result in the narrowing of choice rather than the affordance of choice. So these kinds of things don't need to be absent. They aren't bad, but without wisdom, they result in a narrowing of the affordance of choice. And without wisdom, they are bad. You reach something like the Oedipus complex, like a failure to launch, and kids who, I was having a discussion just yesterday with a group of people, and we were discussing how a small child was being raised. And I'm like, and this kid's 5. I'm like, well, if that's happening, this kid's going to cheat on their spouse when they get married. There's things that you can predict like this because of things that accompany love being implemented without wisdom, without foresight, without sagacity. Okay. So we need these kinds of things. And we took this model basically as a growth chart, and then we took it and we flipped it on its side, and then we compared that. Okay, now let's compare, let's say, the Colossians with the Corinthians. So the Colossians have love attributed to them. We've heard of your love. And Paul tells the Corinthians, you don't have love yet. You're not ready for wisdom. We tried to speak meat to you. I heard a Calvinist the other day thinking Calvinists have meat and Arminians have milk. And I'm like, no, the meat and the milk is not data. It's not content that you affirm. It's not like that at all. It's capacity. Okay. It's capacity and consciousness and fluency. And we're going to get to that in a second. And it's not just, and even Ruckman, he talks about, we're getting into barbecue beefsteak, we're getting into the meat of things, and all what is he, when he's talking about years and years, this I haven't seen this in years, but like when he's talking about the kingdom of heaven versus the kingdom of God, and he does his little things and little 10 little circles that he draws up at the top, and he's like, we're not dealing with milk, we're dealing with barbecue beefsteak. And well, he's dealing with complicated content that you really have to think about and systematize. And something being intellectually complex does not make it meat, okay, at all. There's no content that constitutes meat. That's not what the meat is. And the deal is, these guys can't love. They're all against each other. So they are so Paul emphasizes, where does the love chapter come from? 1 Corinthians 13. Why did he spend so much time spelling out love like this? Because in this model, the Corinthians are here. They are no further than here. They are pre-love as a capacity. They might have love as a motivation or love as an intention, but they are pre-love as a capacity. They cannot love. They cannot afford choice. They're factional. They're divisive. I'm of Paul. I'm of Apollos. Calvinism is better than Arminianism. Calvinism is better than provisionism. Provisionism is better than free grace. I mean, that's where they are. Okay. And so we pointed out, what's the equivalent today of where these things are. So we went through some of these things in our last session, looking at where love shows up in all this. And there is a love in Ephesians 1:15 that isn't in here, that should be in there. But notice that Romans 13 also, he has to tell these guys to love. Love, 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 love. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. And so then what comes next? Awakening. And we notice there's a pattern in Ephesians 5 that there's also awakening there. So there is here's what I would say. What are the fundamentals of the faith? If you want to reduce something to propositions, here's some propositions for you. For those of you who are propositionally minded and errantly think that we are against propositions. The propositions would be something like this. I propose that love is a prerequisite to awakening. And furthermore, I would say that loving your enemy who has betrayed you and caused injustice to you is a prerequisite to awakening. And I would say that love as a capacity is a prerequisite to wisdom cultivation. There's some propositions for you. Write that down in your statement of faith at your church. Okay? So we notice that this love comes before awakening, and in Ephesians, we see the same pattern, even though it comes out differently. So if we were to put these things in order, love, wake up, wisdom, something like that. And not just love, not just compassion, desire, affection, and getting along, but the ability to interact with somebody in a way that actually affords choice. that kind of love. Okay. Mr. Miyagi interacts with Daniel-san in a way that actually gives him the ability to defend himself and win a tournament and get the girl. That's affordance of choice. Okay. So when they broke up in the second, don't worry about that. It's not the point. Get the point. Okay. Get the point. Interact with somebody in a way that creates the affordance of choice. So waking up is pre-wisdom, and wisdom, love is attributed to the Ephesians and to the Colossians, but wisdom is not. So that's kind of interesting to me. We looked at a lot of this. I'm not going to go through any of this because I want to get to what we're talking about today. And now, where did we go here? I actually changed the wording on this slide. I missed Ephesians 1:15 actually. And I missed where Paul attributes love to the Ephesians. But the Ephesians seem to be at a similar place as the Colossians. So you can look for similar words like, okay, we have walk worthy right here in Colossians. We have walk worthy over here. Let me make this a different view so my camera here isn't blocking part of the words. We have being strengthened. We have being strengthened over here in Colossians. We have being strengthened over here in Ephesians. And when we compare these two, I also have the word inner man over here. The love is something that comes from the inside out, not from the outside in. I can't use a set of behaviors and disciplines by themselves to change the inside. But maybe some behaviors and disciplines can help you find what's inside by getting the capacity to distinguish between what is the inner self and what is not the inner self. So that's very interesting. So if I were to break these down, now this would be a prototype for what Paul's transformation model would be. And it would be, I'm comparing things out of Romans chapter 5, out of Colossians, and I'm actually looking at all of Paul's writings now. I don't have the mental capacity to hold every word he said in my mind at the same time. And even while I'm going through this study, I come across, oh yeah, I forgot that was there. Okay, so that's kind of happening too. And this would be a great thing to study as a group, like an FSI or with the Ephesians 4:16 edification model, to go through this and like maybe say, Kevin, aren't you systematizing things? Okay. Yeah, I am. And we have to recognize Goodhart's law, and we have to recognize that all models are wrong, some are useful. But so here's what am I trying to do? I talk about growth and development models a lot on the channel, and I do things, like I'm talking about Fowler's Stages of Faith, like this book right here. And yeah, he's a Christian, writing from a Christian perspective, but we also talk about spiral dynamics and integral theory and Erickson and Kohlberg and Piaget and these guys. And everyone, the moralistic stage 3 people, their first thought is to commit the genetic fallacy. And if they're not Christian, then we can throw out everything that they say. And we need to stop being like that. If you're like that, stop being like that. But what if instead of having Fowler's system of growth, what if we could actually produce Paul's system? What if Paul has more or less a growth model, a model of transformation that we can use to assess both ourselves and to understand where other people are coming from and maybe what their needs are, especially if you're a parent and you have kids. You want to understand where they are, what their needs are. Do they have love as a capacity at this point? Are they very self-centered? What needs to happen? And you can use, if you can break things down into a model, understand that it is insufficient to reality, never mistake the model for the territory, but it can also, but you got to work with something that your mind can wrap itself around. And we're working with a model that's built for action, not one that's built for propositional systematization and in-group normativity. So we're not looking at something static. We're looking at something for action. And this will be a living thing that we're constantly moving and growing, constantly working with, constantly comparing with our experience, constantly adapting. Okay, so we don't want to codify this. We don't want to create a version of this that's set in stone and we turn it into a dogma. And if you don't agree with this, you're not part of the group. Nothing like that. We don't do that. We advocate strongly against ever doing that with anything. So we're not advocating that, but we do think that if you're a teacher, if you're a Sunday school teacher, if you're a pastor, if you're a parent, if you're a friend, okay, it might help you to develop a friend of yourself and for yourself, if you're a spouse, anything, to look at some kind of model, start somewhere, and then use that to assess what you're missing, what you're lacking, what your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats are, okay, a SWOT analysis, and then also lay out for yourself a set of actions or a prescription, if you will, that will help you fill in and get to what you are lacking. It'll help you identify the mark. What is the mark we should be pressing toward? What does that look like? And how can we get there? So, looking at a few comments too. So the draft model, call this a draft, and I would always operate in draft because you never want to get to the point where you've codified something and you can't be moved away from it. So the draft of this growth model would be something like faith as love and faith with love as an intention. So faith and love are going to come together because remember, the word believe, the English word believe, comes from the word beloved. So you can't really have faith without love, without at least the intent of love. And when we say faith, we're not talking about the affirmation of propositions. We're talking about the embodiment of trust, fidelity, and reliability, which you could not have without some kind of valence towards something which we're hoping is love and not something selfish. All right. So, and then you're going to go through something. So I have faith, and I'm going to, with hope, look forward to something, my transformed self, my kid's transformed self. I'm going to envision that. Now I'm going to relate to people, things, and then I'm going to, relate, that's where faith comes in. Faith could be seen as relating based on what we talked about last time. And then I'm going to act. Love is action. Is one thing we talked about last time, and we also talked about how those can swap. How sometimes love is relating and faith is acting. And we gave passages for those two, and then we choose. We make choices. Now that's very, very important. So you're looking at 4 different things here: envisioning, relating, acting, and choosing. If you're going to do these things, you're choosing. Your envision, what you envision, comes up on the end state too. I'm envisioning what I'm supposed to be. I'm not pointing at this writing over here, just letting you know that the envisioning, what you envision, shows up over here too, because a class of the transcendent must precede the immanent. You envision something. Now, in order to bring that envisioned thing to pass, you're going to relate to people, you're going to act, and you're going to make choices. Those are like the 3 doing things that you're going to do. And then ultimately what you want to do is arrive at the thing that you envisioned to start with. So let's say you and your buddy are going to start a fitness goal, and you're, okay, I'm going to lose 30 pounds of fat, and I'm going to gain 10 pounds of muscle, something like that. So then you're going to relate to each other. You're also going to relate to, you might relate to the gym. You might relate to weights. You might relate to a home gym. You're going to relate to each other and to objects and items. And you're going to act. You're going to act in that relationship, and you're going to do things. And then at the end of that 18 months, where are you compared with what you envisioned for yourself before? Okay. How do you measure that? And how many different areas of life can you do this in? So you might also do this with your relationships, like with my spouse. Can I have a very serious discussion where something that I care about feels threatened, and maintain control of my limbic system and my vagal nerve and my impulses, and not react out of those things, but react in a better way, and like maybe flatline those things, like so where they inform you, they're not dead, but they inform you and they aren't deciding. Your limbic system isn't deciding how you act. For a child, the limbic system is deciding how they act. You want your limbic system to not be the thing deciding how you act, and you're a little further back than it. I was hanging out with somebody yesterday to where everything that it input to them was bouncing right off their limbic system, right back out at everybody else. And it wasn't necessarily angry or cantankerous, but it was very self-centered view of how to interact with people. There was nothing going through the limbic system back to the prefrontal cortex, back to a set of wisdom skills, and then coming back out. It was just hitting the limbic system and bouncing off immediately back out to everybody else. And it's like dealing with a child. It can be annoying, it can be frustrating, it can be tedious, and there's a lot of folks that are like that. So you want to have the limbic system as something that's informing you. Okay, so maybe that's a goal. So a small goal, how can I have a discussion with my spouse, for example, about something that I care about, which I feel is threatened, while not reacting in my limbic system? That would be a goal to have. Then you're going to go through tribulations where the thing that you care about is threatened. Let's say if you have a workout plan, let's say you pull a muscle and your shoulder doesn't work anymore and you need surgery. That's frustrating. You're going to develop patience. And your tribulations plus your patience is going to result in experience. Now, there's a word, I should probably write this up here. I'm not right-handed and I'm trying to do this with my right hand, but problems. If you want something to grow from, think about a problem that needs to be solved. What is a problem in your life? What is a problem in somebody else's life? What's a problem in a system? What's a problem anywhere that you think you might be able to do something about? And it seems to be that when you voluntarily adopt responsibility to solve some kind of problem at some level, that is where this cycle occurs. This tribulations, patience, experience, and hope, which brings up, where am I here? The wisdom pattern. Are we familiar with the wisdom pattern? Especially if we have new folks, we need to understand the wisdom pattern. I'm looking for a slide that shows the wisdom pattern. There's so many slides here. There we go. Order, disorder, reorder. Basically, the pattern of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ is the pattern. And with that order, disorder, reorder, okay, what comes with the disorder? The thing that makes it tough is that there's failure, right? There's that's a little F for failure. There's betrayal, and there's injustice. Look at that. We have a new acronym for FBI. It might be a little thing that we can do here on Beyond the Fundamentals. That disorder comes with the FBI: failure, betrayal, and injustice. And that is what makes it so difficult to deal with, because if you've ever been betrayed, the last thing you want to do is love that person. If you've ever been the subject of injustice, the last thing you want to do is love those who caused the injustice. It's the last thing you want to do. But I'm telling you, that is the only path to waking up, especially for Americans. That's the path. That's the path to waking up. I was in a Catholic church yesterday. Notice this disorder thing here, okay? We talk about this a lot on our channel, this disorder concept. We don't like that. And the preaching of the cross is foolishness even to Christians, because they can't handle the disorder. I don't want any disorder. I want to build everything up, make everything bigger, better, faster, stronger. Modernism. That's what we want. Alexander the Great wisdom. Bigger, better, faster, stronger. Occupy everything. Agent Smith, turn everything into something that looks just like ourselves. That's what we want. We don't want any disorder. We don't want FBI coming. Failure, betrayal, and injustice. We don't want that. And so the preaching of the cross is foolishness even to Christians, because the preaching of the cross isn't just that Jesus of Nazareth died and rose again. It's that Jesus said for you to take up your cross. And like the many passages that we've showed, where that suffering is embodied by us, bearing about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus. Failure, betrayal, injustice. That what? The life also of Jesus might be made manifest in our body. Delivered unto death That has to come first before the reorder can come, which is the life also of Jesus might be made manifest in our mortal flesh. So we're talking about things that happen in your body while you're still alive on this planet, not just when you die and go to heaven. So I was sitting in this Catholic church in this wedding, and they had some really beautiful music, and it was beautiful in there. And I'm looking up at this crucifix. And having a Baptist background, one of the first things I think about is how Baptists think of crucifixes. First of all, having any kind of icon to a Baptist is seen as idolatry. And then second of all, a Baptist will say, well, we shouldn't portray Christ on the cross because Christ is risen. And then something kind of hit me, is that I think there's some wisdom in portraying Christ on a crucifix, because, and the reason is this, it's a reminder to us of the suffering that we have to go through. When Jesus says, take up your cross, you're being reminded. So every time you walk into a Catholic church and you see that big prominent crucifix right in the middle of the altar, right in the front of the church, you can't miss it. It's right there. You have to look at it. It's a reminder that you have to take up your cross. You have to suffer like that too. We don't like that. We don't want the FBI. We don't want failure and injustice and betrayal coming our way. We don't want that. And it made me think that, what if Baptists, we have a good post hoc rationalization for why we don't display crucifixes. It's idolatry because it's an image, and it's this and that, and Jesus has risen. We need to portray the risen Christ, not the dying Christ, that kind of thing. I think subconsciously, the preaching of the cross is foolishness to Baptists, and we cannot face the fact that we are to suffer for Christ. It's given unto you not only to believe on him, but to suffer for his sake. Philippians 1:29. We don't like the suffering. Get that crucifix out of my face. I don't want to be reminded that in order to believe on Jesus Christ, I am also expected to take up my cross and suffer in that way. So I had an experience yesterday. Like, I spent my entire life being against crucifixes because of the Baptist meme complex, what they say about them, and polemic against them. And it hit me yesterday that, oh my, I've been failing to see this whole time. The crucifix is a reminder. It's a visual image reminder. We're visual people. A lot of us are anyway. It's a visual reminder of what you're signing up for if you've decided to follow Christ. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. It is suffering. It's failure, betrayal, injustice. But afterwards, there is a resurrection cycle. And I think yesterday I'm at the point now where I'm not all so Baptisty that I'm against crucifixes. I'm like, you do you. Like, if you want to have a crucifix, you gotta do what's right for you. You gotta make your choices. If you want to put a crucifix on the wall in your kitchen, fine, do whatever you gotta do. No problem. I'm not gonna argue about that. I'm not gonna sit there and disrupt dinner. You really shouldn't have this crucifix on the wall over there. No, don't do that kind of nonsense. But yesterday also something happened to me where I think I realized the value of seeing the crucifix, of being reminded of the suffering that's coming your way. And I think that's something that Baptists are missing big time. We don't like that. The preaching of the cross is suffering to we Baptists. So we go back to our model over here that we've been looking at. We're trying to solve a problem and develops patient's experience. And we're looking at that suffering, Christ on the cross, okay? And we have hope of some kind of resurrection, that the life also of Christ might be manifest in our mortal body, waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. And then we have love. You love what? You love the people that caused the FBI, the failure, the betrayal, and the injustice. You actually love them. Jesus says, love your enemies. And I used to think that was just like Jesus advocating being nice, and that's just the way to be. And I actually have recently come to see that as a prescription for awakening. When you fail because of betrayal and injustice, when you've voluntarily adopted responsibility and it fails because of betrayal and injustice. That is your opportunity to love as Christ loved. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Or you're being tortured to death, literally. That's your opportunity to wake up and precipitate a resurrection cycle to come afterward. That's your opportunity to wake up. Now, when you wake up, be prepared, because you will experience something with God personally. You will experience something with God that you cannot explain in your current way you see things. And then you will have to go through a period of time where you adjust how you see things. I don't see things this way anymore. You have to admit that. So you go through that period of time after you wake up, after you see something from this. And that's where this pattern comes in: wake up, grow up, clean up, show up. Now, we've done videos on this. I think we did a 2-part video on this, and we've been trying to incorporate wherever we go. What is this wake up, grow up, clean up, show up? Okay, wake up is awareness. I'm aware of something. I can't do anything about it. I don't have love as a capacity yet necessarily, or maybe I do have love as a capacity, but I have awareness, but I don't necessarily know how to operate in an arena where what I now know is the reality, because all my life I've been in this one worldview, and now God has revealed himself to me, and now I don't know how to operate in that arena because it's new and foreign to me, and it's not like anything I've been growing up with or learned or been trained in seminary or when I got my theology degree and that stuff. Okay, and I'm saying that generally for anybody who's out there. There's no amount of training and education that can give you this. It doesn't happen that way. Okay, it happens this way, not that way. So you wake up and then grow up. The Bible says in Ephesians 4:15 that speaking the truth in love. So now we're speaking in a way that matches reality, not repeat. This is profane and vain babbling. So this is not speaking the truth. This is profane and vain babbling. Okay, so we're speaking the truth in love, the kind of truth you're afraid to tell people because it'll ostracize you, that we may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ. So there is a component to where being motivated by love and being able to speak truth that transforms chaos into habitable order, that's where the capacity comes in. And actually implementing that is where the growth comes in. And then cleaning up, 2 Corinthians 7:1, let us cleanse ourselves of all filthiness of the flesh and the spirit. And that is integrating the shadow, discarding your ideological trappings, all that whole worldview, how you saw things as an independent Baptist, as a Southern Baptist, as a Presbyterian, as a Calvinist, as a Provisionist, all that needs to go in the trash can. And then you now develop a new worldview, but you're no longer egoically attached to this new worldview. And then your identity, your egoic attachments, okay? All that stuff needs to be cleaned up and gone away. When we say clean up, you think of like, oh, I need to stop smoking and cussing. Actually, cleaning up, for someone who's never drunk before, they might be egoic, like never drunk alcohol, for example, okay? Say, oh, that's wrong. I got all the biblical reasons for why that's wrong. And don't comment about this because I've already got all the biblical reasons for why it's wrong. I've preached sermons on it. I used to have a sermon called Spirits in the Temple. Went over all the passages. I know all the passages in Isaiah and in Hosea and in Proverbs and in 1 Timothy 5. Like I know where the passages are. I know what they say. Okay? But if somebody's egoically attached to, I've never tasted alcohol before because I'm a goody-goody. Well, part of their cleaning up might be to have to let go of that. So their path might actually involve taking a drink of alcohol where other people, where it's undeniable and everybody knows they did it, to release them from that egoic attachment to the fact that they've never done it. And vice versa. Somebody who drinks all the time is known as a guy who can put anybody down. He might have to let go of that egoic attachment by like not drinking any alcohol ever again, ever. You understand what I'm saying? So you get to a point where the things themselves aren't in and of themselves holiness. The things themselves they play different roles. And what role does it play in you? And if you have an egoic attachment to something, if you have an egoic attachment to some kind of pharisaical cleanliness, You're going to have to bust that up somehow. Like Ruckman used to say, God used to, and I think he was probably quoting Bob Jones Sr., God gives even the most pedigree dog fleas just to remind him that he's still a dog. You know. And then now I've got a new world view. I'm trying to grow into it interactively. I'm acting and relating and choosing and growing into it. And then I'm cleaning up and getting rid of my egoic attachments. I'm integrating the shadow. I'm getting rid of my ideology, my old worldview, and I'm having new worldview capabilities that I'm not attached to. And now I'm going to develop this. Now maybe I can show up in the new capacity. I put away my old independent Baptist, King James only identity. And I'm not saying the content is wrong. You misunderstand me. What I'm saying is I'm no longer attached to it. I've got a different worldview now, and I'm operating in it, but I'm not egoically attached to it. So if somebody comes up and tells me like 38 reasons why the way I see things now is absolutely wrong, it doesn't hurt me at all because I'm not attached to it. Somebody posted a quote just recently. It said, I think it was Christian in my texts. When you criticize somebody's ideology and they react defensively like you're criticizing them, it's because they're identified. When you criticize Calvinism and the Calvinists get upset, it's because they're identified with Calvinism. When you criticize provisionism and the provisionists get upset, it's because they're emotionally and they're identified egoically with provisionism. Otherwise, and so it feels like you're attacking them when you attack it because they see it as part of their identity. So you move to a place where the things that you operate in, you're not egoically attached to. So when it gets proven fraudulent or false or not helpful or wrong or something like that, you're actually thankful. Oh, now I can create a new space and a new way to see things, which is more in alignment with reality. And I can operate there. Still not. So I'm not an ist. I'm not a, somebody was saying the other day, like monism and I'm like, I don't like that because I don't like saying it that way. I would rather call it unitive awareness. It's an awareness that I have. Calling something an ism, the stage 3 people think that it's a set of beliefs that you're attaching themselves to, just like you are. It's not a set of beliefs. It's an awareness level. It's something you can see. And how do we bring people to where they can see it without creating imposters who are saying all the things, saying all the same things for those who have seen it, but they haven't seen it. When Jordan Peterson talks about like repeating an ideology, like the Gideon Hull videos that we reviewed not long ago. He's an imposter. He's saying all the Calvinist things, but he didn't see all that stuff. He didn't come to envision for himself anything that he's saying. He's repeating all the things that the in-group expects you to repeat in order to be good and orthodox and non-heretical. Okay? And so even if the ideology was true, even if it was comprised of completely true statements, for you to repeat them as if they're your own, when you haven't arrived there experientially through tribulations, experience yourself, is the same thing as lying. And you have no right to repeat the things that aren't yours. So eventually you show up. Like Paul tells the Colossians, that you might walk worthy of the Lord, or how he words it. And says, well, nobody's worthy of God. Just stop. Don't do that. Hear what he's saying. Okay? And walk in a way that is commensurate with the will of God. Or like Paul says in Ephesians 4:1, walk worthy of the vocation wherewith ye are called. Walk in a way that is in alignment, walk in a way that is commensurate with the calling. Walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. So what you do, your actions and your relating and your choices are being fruitful. What does being fruitful means? It's resulting in the affordance of choice. and increasing in the knowledge of God. That would be participatory knowledge of God, not propositional knowledge of God. So all that takes place when you wake up. After you see, you have consciousness, but you don't have capacity. I'm aware. I am now aware that things are very different than how I thought they were before, but I don't know how to operate. I don't have any attunement, participatory attunement with this new arena that I now perceive. So you have to grow into it. So waking up is just the first step. And then you have to grow up, clean up, and then eventually you can show up where that is you are operating effectively in the new arena that you perceived back when you woke up. And that time span is probably going to be 3 to 5 years. Tracking how long this kind of thing takes. And the practice, somebody told me the other day, and I think I mentioned this in another, like in the Wednesday night live stream. Somebody told me the other day they were, something they read and followed and pursued moved them from darkness to light. Like, and my question isn't what do you believe? My question is, what did you do? What did you do to go from darkness to light? And that's the kind of question you ask, like over the East, they ask, what's your practice? Over in the West, they ask, what's your beliefs? Don't, like John Vervaeke says, don't tell me what you believe. Show me how you have transformed. And then we'll start talking about how you got there. So in order for this, after you wake up, you can actually squander a wake up. Okay, Hebrews 6:4-6. You can squander a wake up. You can get to the point where you wake up and you see something, but then you don't grow up or clean up and you never show up. And you have stunted growth. And then you might get resentful. You start getting resentful about the FBI that came your way, the failure, the betrayal, the injustice. You start getting resentful about that. And then now you're back to crucifying Christ again instead of embodying the crucifixion for yourself again. Can't look at that cross. Can't stand to look at that cross. You had to put that blame elsewhere. Like Adrian Mason says, and the cycle begins again afterward. That's exactly right. So notice that. I'm going to make this bigger. So now that you've awakened, this process of waking up, growing up, cleaning up, this is wisdom cultivation happens in conjunction with this. Okay, that's the wisdom cultivation. And then guess what happens? You're showing up. You can actually operate effectively in this new reality that you now perceive that you didn't perceive before. I put away the old independent Baptist way of seeing things, and I'm now seeing things very differently. Now I'm getting to the point where I can kind of operate there. I'm kind of growing into it. And I'm starting to be able to show up, starting to be able to help other people also make steps in this direction as well. Now, guess what happens? You voluntarily adopt responsibility. Guess what happens then? Failure, betrayal, injustice. Okay, so you notice that this up here is faith with love as an intention. That's step one. So now your next phase of transformation, you're back at step one for your next phase. Okay, because remember, the way we're looking at things transformatively, man, there's so many slides here, is that we are looking up to the next version of our transformed self. Transformatively. This is the old way of looking at things. Everything gets offset to the afterlife, and this isn't a dichotomy. We're not saying that that's wrong, but we're saying that we're revising this to make it a fractal mindset. In other words, whatever is true on the big scale over here is also true on the small scale over here with regard to every degree of transformation. So you set your mind on things above, there's your transformed self. Set your mind on things above, there's your transformed self. Okay. Back to the slides where we were. So that starts all over again. That phase starts all over again. I wonder if I had some of those closer. Okay. I need to put some of those closer in there. So if you were to take the, for example, now notice over here on this what I write up here, faith is the embodiment of fidelity, trust, and reliability. Faith has love as a motivation and an intention built into it. That is true of the Greek word pistis and of the English word believe, okay? Because it comes from the word beloved, and it's commitment with love. So there's an action component to it as well. Faith as fact affirmation is in having mode. Genuinely embodied faith is in being mode. So this is the faith in having mode of fact affirmation. That is the faith of Calvinism and provisionism. I saw a video recently, somebody posted, it was Leighton Flowers talking to a Calvinist about all the fundamentals that they both affirm. And there wasn't enough Mylanta or Pepto-Bismol to stop the puking fest. It was just the most absolute horrible thing. We all affirm these things the same together. I think the comment that I made under that video was that, tapeworms and hookworms and ticks all share the same host body, but that doesn't mean that they're not parasites. Okay. So that cycle begins again afterward. So then the next thing, so we don't want faith as having mode. We want faith, embodied faith in being mode, which is very different than Calvinism and provisionism, kind of Dungeons and Dragons or Rector set Jumanji land. So if we were to suss these things out, let's say, okay, levels of development. Where would we put the Corinthians? The Corinthians are right here. Why do I say that? Because they don't have love yet. They're still divisive. They're still factional. They're still, you free willers, they always hate the doctrine of election. It's factional. Okay? So Calvinists, provisionists, all those fools, they're all up here with the Corinthians. Factional. I'm of Paul, I'm of Apollos, I'm of Calvin, I'm of provisionism. That kind of thing is going on up there. Whereas the Romans? The Romans, they don't have love as a capacity yet. They're being prompted into love. Now, they don't have the problems the Corinthians did, but because of Romans 13, they still have the issue of love being prompted on them, and they don't have love attributed to them. So you might say they are still pre-love as capacity. Now, I assessed the Ephesians as pre-love as well, but I would modify that now because I overlooked some things. So I'd probably put the Ephesians right with the Colossians right now, because love is attributed to the Ephesians exactly the same way it is to the Colossians, right, in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 15. So we could do this. Let's do this with the Thessalonians. Let's do this with the Galatians. Let's do this with, and I'm going to give you some hints for what you might have as homework, okay, for this. In just a couple minutes. Well, I'll give you the homework right now. The homework would be this. I'm going to go back and finish up, and then we'll be done. Homework would be this. On the left side of the screen is every place love is mentioned. This is Romans. On the right side of the screen is every place wisdom is mentioned. Do a study on this and make an assessment on the Romans. Where are they? Are they pre-love? Are they post-love? Do they still need love? Are they ready for wisdom cultivation? Okay. Have they woken up yet? And we see in a few minutes that he's telling them they need to awake. And the Ephesians still need to awake as well. Ephesians 5:14. Christians, saved, faithful, saints in Christ Jesus, not awake. You do the same thing with 1 Corinthians. It's comparing worldly wisdom with man's wisdom a lot, because they're all about some Alexander the Great wisdom. They're not about any Heraclitus wisdom. Logos, where logos comes from Heraclitus, what John writes about. Heraclitus developed that idea, and then the Gospel of John starts with that idea that came from Heraclitus. So you can't lump all these guys together like they're all bad. Okay. So on the left-hand side, every place mentions love. On the right-hand side, every place is mentioned wisdom. Left-hand side, every place that mentions love. Right-hand side, every place that mentions wisdom. And then develop where are they proximally in relation to love and wisdom. And I'm using the Greek words for these. Galatians, where are they with regard to love, and where are they with regard to wisdom? No mentions of wisdom in that book. What about the Ephesians? Where are they on love? Left-hand side. Where are they on wisdom? Right-hand side. Bam. And you can see right here, there's some wisdom that came from God. And then he wants them, may give unto you the spirit of wisdom. Okay. To the intent. Now there's an intent for wisdom that be made known, but they don't have wisdom. He doesn't attribute wisdom to them. In Ephesians 1:15, he attributes love to them, does not attribute wisdom to them. And then in Revelation chapter 2, we see John talking, they lost their first love. So they're ready for wisdom cultivation, they backslid. It's possible. Philippians, interestingly, no mention of wisdom there. And maybe, well, but there is a lot of prompting for love. Okay? If there be any comfort of love, I pray that your love may abound yet more and more in all knowledge and judgment. So maybe there's like inklings of love, but they need some more. I'm just giving you suggestions, things to look for, okay? Ways to analyze the text. You see, you're not going to get this stuff out of systematic theology. You don't have a systematic theology telling you any of this stuff, okay? That's why you come to Beyond the Fundamentals, because we look at the text in a new way, to analyze it in a new way. But I want you to analyze it with me. Colossians, very interesting. Another comparison of wisdom, one kind of wisdom versus another. So we have love attributed to them. Wisdom is not attributed to them, but it is compared. It's interesting that wisdom, you have no discernment for wisdom because you haven't seen it yet. And if you try to describe it, you become an imposter. So there's this really strange catch-22 situation where you really got to feel into it. And I think that's where the Ephesians 4:16 edification model comes in. So you get the idea. Go through all of Paul's writings, do the same thing. Compare all the passages that mention love on the left-hand side with all the passages that mention wisdom on the right-hand side, and make an assessment of where they are with regard to love and wisdom. Do they still need to get to love? Or are they ready for wisdom yet or not? And make an assessment. And when you start doing this, when you start parsing it out, looking for that, because that's going to when you look at it that way, that's what's going to stand out as salient to you. Okay. And then you'll start to gain a fluency in spotting where people are. Like, say you have 4 kids and they're getting along differently, and one of them has capacity for love and one of them doesn't. Well, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to get that capacity in this child? You see, if you're a pastor, if you're a Sunday school teacher, if you're a school teacher, if you're dealing with people in any kind of way, if you're a friend, if you're a spouse, you can start becoming fluent in how to deal with people to get them where they need to be on their next rung of transformation, and lay out that like this would be a scaffolding, for example, of what needs to come next for you. And of course, every one of these can fold out and expand into a lot of other things. And this also, here's a scaffolding. So over here, you might put your kids, where are my kids on this? Where are my grandkids on this? Where are my Sunday school students on this kind of thing? Or have people do self-assessments, have them gain the fluency within them. So some things that stand out to me here is that the Romans, why am I highlighting this? Because we're in Colossians and they are prayed for. I do not cease to pray for you and desire that you might be filled with the knowledge of his will and wisdom and spiritual understanding. So I'm looking at the concept of the will of God and where it appears in proximity to the concept of wisdom. It's kind of what I'm on my salience landscape here. So we want knowledge of God's will with all wisdom. So they have love attributed to them. They do not have wisdom attributed to them. What about the Romans? The Romans, there is a talk about the will of God, proving what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God, right? Present yourself a living sacrifice, bearing about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus. And don't be conformed to this world, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Then he goes out to lay out a bunch of very specific things in Romans chapter 12. And then in chapter 13, he describes love for them and tells them, and then awake. Now is high time to awake. So you need the love and awakening wisdom. They're not ready for wisdom yet. So he doesn't attribute this love to them yet, and he's trying to lead them into it. It's not that they're problematic and factional like the Corinthians, but they're just not there yet. What we have in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 16. I left out 15, which attributes love to them, but it's very interesting to me where he's praying for people. Now, the fact that Paul is praying for people to get things. He's like, I want you to have the spirit of wisdom and the revelation and the knowledge of him. Well, if knowledge could be captured in something like this, why is Paul praying for them to get it and not just spelling it out for them? It's because it can't be captured in something like this. And if you just spell it out or attempt to, the only thing you're going to do is create imposters. So what Paul is trying to move them into is not something that's written anywhere in Paul's letters. It's never described. It's never written. It's kind of leaned into. Now, what you can do is you can look at something like the parables of Jesus. Then you compare everything Paul is looking at and then see the parables of Jesus as kind of like Zen koans. And you can use these two things to kind of lean into it together. The problem is you can't see it until you can see it. So how do you describe colors to a blind person? It's that kind of thing. It's a very difficult thing to do. And so it's very careful. You don't want to ideologically spoil somebody. You want to keep them unspoiled from ideological possession of like your independent Baptist statement of faith and your Calvinism, your provisionism. Keep them ideologically unspoiled so that they are more likely to have an awakening. John says, love seems to orient wisdom. And that's, what we're going to find when we double click on all these things is that each one unfolds into a bonded triad of things that also unfold into bonded triads themselves. So there's a actionable cascading of all these concepts, which gets kind of complex, and it really brings up the chicken and the egg problem. Which one comes first? And it's not something to suss out and have a dogma about, but it is something to contemplate, and it can bring wisdom about. So when Paul is asking for things, he's asking for them to come into that your eyes of your understanding being enlightened. Ephesians 5:14, awake thou that sleepest, arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. Well, enlightened is a Bible word. The eyes of your understanding being enlightened. It's a Bible word. Don't let the East steal it from you. Don't act like the East owns that word and it's demonic. Don't do that. That you may know what is the hope of his calling. Well, if Paul knows what the hope of his calling is, why can't he just say it? Why can't he just say it in the letter? Why does he have to pray for them to get it? Because it's something that has to be seen first. And then no description does it justice. And if you try to give it a description, all you do is create imposters. And with the riches of the glory of the inheritance of his inheritance in the saints, and the exceeding greatness of his power to usward who believe according to the working of his mighty power. And so usward who believe, in other words, you have to start this grace that we have is access by faith, Romans 5:2. By whom also we have access by faith into this grace. So if you don't start with faith, all this stuff is not working in you until you start there. You have to start where you have to start. And then you start moving forward. So it's not to usward who believe because we're elect. None of that kind of nonsense, okay? It's just that faith is the starting point, is the why Paul is saying it that way. So pay attention to what he's praying for over here in Colossians, that you might walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing. In other words, they're doing good. They have love attributed to them, and they're not bad, but there's still somewhere to go with it. And it's not something he can just spell out. Now, he does follow this up in chapter 3, into chapter 2 and chapter 3, with some practical guidelines for what you should do when you are pre-wisdom. Okay? But when you are post-wisdom, you don't need to be told what to do, which is probably why there are no letters written to post-wisdom people. They don't need to be told anything. Isn't that weird? Interesting. Being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. Well, how about you just give me all the knowledge of God, Paul? Isn't it in some systematic theology in heaven somewhere that the Bible is hinting at all the time? Isn't the Bible written in service to some kind of systematic doctrine somewhere? No, it's not. So Paul has to pray for them to get this because it can't be spelled out. I hope this is you think about this for a few months. It's going to really affect your relationship with the Bible in a good way, but you will feel threatened at first. You will feel threatened at first. I guess I could be making this bigger for y'all. I'm sorry about that. Strengthened with all might according to his glorious power. Now, what words would you think would follow that? Strengthened with all might. You might say that you might control and dominate and be effective. It's not what he says. Strengthened with his might according to his glorious power unto control and dominance. No, unto patience and long suffering with joyfulness. Can I remind you of this kind of thing over here? You get this patience, experience, hope. Okay. And there's rejoice, joyfulness. See that? See how these patterns keep showing up in all these places? Giving thanks unto the Father, because giving thanks and not being resentful is essential to moving forward, because resentment will take you down. Partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light. Don't just think about going to heaven. Think about the light that you get when you awaken and step into your next phase of transformation in this life. Who hath delivered us from the power of darkness, being a really good rule-following independent Baptist, darkness, and hath translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son. Translated us into the kingdom of his. What's the kingdom of his dear Son? It's suffering, betrayal, and injustice. That's what we've signed up for. Okay. Now we usually just take this as metaphysical. Oh, I've been born again, and now I'm seated in heavenly places in Christ Jesus. Okay. When it's fine to think about all those things, but I don't think that's what he's saying here. To put it that way. Being translated in the kingdom as dear Son there's some kind of, the Colossians maybe are, I don't think they're told to wake up at any point. Maybe they are post-love and have woken up. There is no Ephesians 5:14 in Colossians, I don't think. There is no Romans 13:11. I think that's the passage where it says awake out of sleep, where that happens. So I think these guys might be post-waking up, so delivered us from the power of darkness. So they've had a waking up after they have had love as capacity. So it's interesting to compare these prayers here. So go back and look at these prayers. I bow my knees unto the Father. The fact that, now we could go through these, but here's what I want you to take this away as you look at these passages. The fact that he is praying for them to get something indicates that it's something he can't just spell out. Can't just put it in prose. Can't put it in an instruction manual. How do you get people to get this without becoming an imposter? If Paul were to just spell it out like Grudem or Harwood did, what you wind up with is a bunch of imposters who start saying all those words, but haven't actually seen anything or embodied any of the faith or the love or the wisdom, and haven't had any awakening. You don't want that. So how do you do that? It's hard. It actually turns out to be hard to do. Colossians 2:1-4. Interesting, being knit together in love, in whom are hid all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge in Christ. This I say, lest any man should beguile you with enticing words. What does this mean? Well, enticing words, hey, I have everything in a very simplistic system that you can understand, and it's scalable, all this. A cult is made when you offer overly simplistic solutions to complex problems. That's what a cult is, right? One of the definitions. I really like that definition. So the enticing words, hey, you don't need to suffer. You don't need all this love. You don't need to take up your cross. You don't need to cultivate your wisdom. You don't need the FBI. You don't need failure, injustice, and betrayal. We have a system. The system is very clean. It's organized. It's neat. It's pretty. You can learn it. You can propagate it, and you can escalate yourself within a hierarchy of our in-group over here, and you'll be doing just fine. So when it comes to the triad of growth, this came to me. I've been knowing about consciousness capacity for a while, but in my discussions with Christian DeSalvo recently, this kind of emerged as like a fluency thing. There's 3 things that must be there, and it's consciousness, capacity, and fluency. Okay. You need these. And if you're if you understand eminent domain metaphysics, okay, your capacity is the transcendent. That's what you're aiming to get to. And your consciousness is the omniscient, and the fluency is the immanent. Okay, it's how you bring all these things together. Strategy, vision, and culture kind of thing. So strategy would be in your capacity, well, would be in your fluency, that kind of thing. Capacity would be the transcendent, that would be your vision, which you're aiming for, and a class of that transcendent must precede the immanent, and your consciousness is in the omniscient, and that is the culture, your awareness of what all's around you, the new worldview that you see. So if you were to expand this out, let me go ahead. There's certain people that just, for some reason, it's not letting me do that. Let me see if I can make that bigger. Anyway, I'll have to get rid of that later. So if I were to expand this out, it would look something like this. Now notice I still have consciousness. Oops. I still have consciousness, capacity, and fluency. Now when I expand this out, consciousness. Now once I'm conscious, then I'm gonna have to grow up and clean up, and the capacity is when you show up, right? Now your fluency is understanding the trajectory and the scaffolding of your growth. I'm trying to wrap this up. And so what do you mean by fluency? Well, these are just a brainstorming idea. These are when I'm talking to somebody or trying to assess these things, I have all these, this is like a scatterbrain thing of all the things that's going through my head when I'm talking to somebody, and I feel like I have the freedom and the liberty to assess who and what I'm talking to and why. Okay. And I'm looking at where they are in their moral foundations. I'm looking at where their locus of authority is. What's their grasp of epistemology? Are they rivalrous and antagonistic? Are they in their left hemisphere? What is their orientation? Are they ideologically profane, or are they let go of ideology like provisionism and Calvinism so that they can be oriented toward the sacred? Are they in having mode or being mode? Do they understand the relationship between science, intuition, reasoning, and imagination? Or are they very reductionistic? Where are they on the four kinds of knowing? Do they get that? Where are they on 4E cognition? Where are they operating? What's their big five personality profile? Have they had any trauma in the past? What are their ego attachments? Okay. What's their concept of meaning in life, purpose, coherence, significance, and mattering? So are they cynical? Are they naive? Okay. I'm assessing all these things. Do they have a need for certainty? So in my mind, all these kinds of things are going through my head 100 miles an hour fluently, or at a certain level of fluency, you see? And so the idea would be that you need this fluency to understand the trajectory and scaffolding of growth. And we need to have some kinds of descriptions of things. Now, the danger is there. It's as soon as you describe it, maybe you're violating Goodhart's law, maybe you're creating imposters. So I'm hoping that being aware of violating Goodhart's law and the potential to create imposters can help us possibly be able to engage with the information in a non-egoic way that doesn't do any of those things, or that minimizes them and has a minimalistic crossover error rate, hopefully and ideally. So when we have these things, we have your consciousness. The spiral dynamics addresses consciousness, not so much capacity. Stages of faith deals more with capacity. Stage 5 is a capacity. It's not that capacity probably has to sit on a consciousness level. So you can actually be conscious at second tier consciousness before you have the capacity to operate there effectively. And we Christians, since we're not effective, we substitute effectiveness with feeling righteous, moral, and virtuous by believing certain things. Oh, we affirm the fundamentals of the faith. Oh, I feel righteous, moral, and virtuous because we agree on these things. That is substituting for capacity. So you could take someone like Elon Musk, for example. I've seen him in interviews and stuff, and he is very conscious. He has a high capacity. He is just not fluent in scaffolding and trajectory. So he's effective. But does he know what's going for him is all that? I haven't detected that in his. He's very interesting, and he has all this, so he's got a lot going for him. Jordan Peterson's talk with the guy who was wearing a cowboy hat about why it's scary to be a Christian or something like that. That was one of the most profane conversations I've ever heard. That I think Peterson should have sat down Kathy Griffin, or that, yeah, he should not have tolerated that fool. But you can look at people and you kind of assess where they are. It's like someone like Elon Musk has a lot of capacity. I mean, look at what Steve Jobs. Okay, he probably had high consciousness. He definitely had high consciousness and high capacity. And I would suspect that Steve Jobs also had a significant fluency in growth and transformation trajectory models. Okay, so it's kind of interesting to look at people who have affected the world and kind of see where they are on this kind of stuff. You think like this might be a lot of things to consider, but in Fowler's Stages of Faith, he breaks it down into just 6 of these items, and these are just color coded differently. It's the same thing, but just color coded differently. And the 6 things are: what's their form of logic? How are they at perspective taking? Perspectival awareness. Okay, we talk about that a lot. How are they on the form of moral judgment? That's where Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind, comes in. Moral foundations theory help you with this. What about their bounds of social awareness? What about their locus of authority? What about the form of world coherence? What about symbolic function? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He is looking at 7 dimensions. He's looking at 7 dimensions to assess somebody's growth. There's no limit. There's no limit on how many dimensions you can look at. You can look at more dimensions. And so we're going to bring in, what you want to do really is bring in as many dimensions as you can be fluent in. Try to be as fluent as you can in multiple dimensions. And so we're looking at these 3 things of consciousness, capacity, and fluency. And when it comes to fluency, let's try to increase our fluency in what we think what is the scaffolding? If we were to create a scaffolding like this of whatever Paul's transformation and growth model would look like, can we do that? Can we create that? And I think it's possible. I really think we need the Ephesians 4:16 edification model. I'm going to say one more thing, and I'm going to end this, and we're going to be done. I want to talk about the superordinate for a second. The superordinate is very, very important. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. The superordinate is a very, very important concept that we need to get. Okay, when you have there's one, like John Vervaeke says, being autodidactic in these kinds of things can be very self-deceptive, and that's true. And then I've heard people say that what you very much need is a teacher in order to, like a one-on-one teacher. Think of Count of Monte Cristo or something like that, to like a Guildcraft apprenticeship to lead you into where you need to be. Okay, so now I'm gonna do what I was trying to do. Bam, that'll help me not be distracted by nonsense. So that which is superordinate, if you have a couple, and don't worry about the imposter. We already talked about the imposter thing. This is just reminders of things that I want to talk. I'm talking about what's superordinate right now. If you have a couple, husband and wife, there's like a third that's there. That's the reason it feels like a death when you get divorced or break up or something like that, is because there really is a third. Jesus says, where 2 or 3 are gathered, there am I in the midst of them. In Daniel chapter 3, when the 3 Hebrews, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, were in the fiery furnace, it looked like there was four people. So there's one being that is superordinate. When you have a family of 5, there is a 6th thing that is the superordinate, that is the family, right? When you do inductive textual criticism, or inductive textual unfolding, which Nick has been leading our FSI group through in the past few weeks, you get to this place where the author of whatever you're studying seems like he's sitting there in the room with you, and that's kind of like the superordinate. When you do circling on a value such as beauty or hope or virtue, something like that, you get to the point where you feel like hope is sitting in there with you and instructing you all, the superordinate. Okay. And I want to lean into the idea that with the Ephesians 4:16 edification model, there is something superordinate. Jesus says, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. There is something that is superordinate, that is above and transcendent to the group itself, but cannot exist without the group, that is the teacher. And you sense, you know, that when you say something, it's not coming from ideology. It was generated from the interaction. You weren't thinking of it before. They weren't thinking of it before. But because of your synergy together, you've developed this new insight that happens to be right and helpful and wonderful and beautiful. Your capacity to do that is homage to the superordinate. And your ability to suss out that which is in alignment with the superordinate is rightly dividing the word of truth. It's not about rightly dividing scripture and cutting it all up into dispensations and stuff like that. It's like when insights are generated in the Ephesians 4:16 edification model, can you suss out that which is in alignment with the superordinate, which is in alignment with the thing that has been envisioned for you to be more Christ-like than you were, to create more affordance of choice. So I want to be thinking about that more so. Look at a couple comments. Let me just get rid of this, for example, right now, for now. So we're about done. Just looking at a couple comments. Again, I want to remind everybody, if you like what you're getting here at Beyond the Fundamentals, feel free to support us. And that QR code right there will take you to our donate page, where there's 5 different digital ways to donate. If you don't like any of those, shoot me an email and let me know what you have in mind, and we'll work something out. But I really appreciate the support that we get from everybody. And I have whatever Moses Grace has going on. I just hid him from the channel, so that's profane and vain babblings from them. All right. And I see some comments. Don't have time to look at them all. I've got to go. I'm out of time. And once again, we have gone way over, and I really apologize. I thought I could be able to do this in an hour today. It's difficult when you're trying to not just convey information, but you're fighting against thought inertia of all the pathological versions of Christianity that still fill our minds, having to fight against that and make that distinction as you go. It's like, it's as bad as having to preach with an interpreter time-wise, you know? So bear that in mind. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Love you all. May the Lord bless you. Good day.
I don't particularly care what you think of Brian Danlinger. in the sense of this isn't about personality or whatever. But Brian has done some excellent videos, I believe, on pre-trib. So I'm going to put a link to that in the side chat. I do have disagreements sort of with Brian. I don't agree with everything he says, of course. I don't need to. But there's a long list of videos here he's done on the pre-trib rapture. I can't think of any other channels I would go to. I've got a list. I took notes of all the verses he quoted. I do have that list somewhere. Who else would I go to? I like listening to Chris Fisher. God, he's open. I'm not an open theist. I've got very little time for Leighton Flowers, really. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Right, I'm going to go, I think. Have a nice day. God bless you. I might play some of my clips, actually. I'll go through some of these screenshots. Here's Kevin Thompson's. I think it's still the same PayPal account. This is the QR code for it. I'll get rid of that banner. Oh no, it should be okay. Yeah. And here's his Venmo. I'm going to get rid of some of these images I've got stored. Ooh. I'll delete that one. I'll have a quick look through the ones. What's this one? Oh, that. Yeah. Get rid of that, I think. You can barely read it. This is a picture of what Calvinism is to the Christianity. If you visualize Christianity as that fence post, Calvinism is a post turtle. You know it's there, you don't know how it got there. Yeah, I'll keep that one, I think. Calvinism is sin. It's just profane babbling. Really is. I listened to Sky out when he did a video. His audio was garbage and he was just talking rubbish, basically. Shocker. I'll try and delete this one. Oh yeah, delete. I don't need that one, I think. It's a bit awkward to read anyway. I don't know what this screenshot is. I've forgotten it. I don't title them usually. What's this one? Oh. Yeah, that's no use to me anymore. I don't think it ever was in the first place anyway. Here's the QR code to my PayPal if you want to help out. If you don't, that's okay. Of course it is. I'll leave that there. This is another meme on Calvinism. Excellent point there, isn't there? Very good point. Calvinism isn't good news at all. What's this one? Oh, I'll delete that, I think. What's this? You can barely read it. Get rid of that. Yeah, Calvinists can't read. Yeah. I'll keep that one. Yeah. Screenshots of comments. I might just get rid of all them screenshots of comments. Don't see the point. Not sure about that one. Oh, there's Olive. Alright. Can't remember what half of these screenshots are. I've got hundreds of them. I'll leave that. Let's go to this one. Oh, here's Jill being a clown. Yeah, I don't need that. I don't need what these Calvinists say. That's gone. I'm not your brother, Sky Out. Oh. Certainly not. Yeah, why did I feel the need? Because you two were talking absolute garbage between yourselves. Yeah, I'll leave that one. Can't remember I took a screenshot of that. Something to do with preterism, probably. I was trying to expose the synagogue. Here's Kevin's cat. I don't need that, really. You want to persecute Kevin Thompson's cat? Go ahead. Yeah. What's this one? That's awkward to read. I'll get rid of that. Or maybe not. I might. Oh, here's Layman's with his question begging. Yeah. I thought it was affirming the consequence. I think it may well be begging the question or question begging. I don't even remember why that was there. What was it? Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah. Bit awkward to read. What's this one? I'm going to play some music and I'll be back in a minute. Now let's have a look at these pics, screenshots, because I'm going to get rid of some of them. I'll keep that one, I think. Here's the Calvinist Ouija board. I don't think I need that really. Yeah, I can't read the writing there. I'll get rid of this image. Should I? Yeah. This one. Yeah, difficult to read. Maybe I'll test it out later. I'll have a look. That's gone. Yeah, I'll leave that. Yeah. Oh, Beckel. Yeah, Beckel, he says Jack Smack thinks he's been given the ability to determine who's the elect and who's not. Perhaps you are, Beckel, I don't know. Based on whether or not he likes their testimony. Yeah, well, I've listened to your testimony, Beckel. I'm tempted to play it. I think I've still got it in my studio here. You think you can gauge or pass judgment, as it were, on someone's prayer life, don't you? Hey? Hope you enjoy yourself over in Praise I Am's channel. Wonder how long that will last. Oh yeah, this book here, Phil Bears. The picture on the front of the book has changed, but just have a Google or Amazon search Calvin's Desperation by Phil Bear. Excellent book. Here's my little list. I'm going to update this list eventually, if I remember. Calvinism is far less man-centered than synergism will ever be. How can you get more man-centered than Calvinism? I even heard John Myers say, oh, he's a Calvinist, but he doesn't follow Calvinism. That's ridiculous. Anyway, I'll get rid of that, I think. What's this one? Yeah. What's this? Just going through some of these screenshots, which I'm going to get rid of. Oh, pathetic. Not going to show that one. I'll have a look at it later myself, actually. What's this? Oh, Vets for Christ. Yeah, less said the better, I suppose. I'm going to leave that image on there. Have I still got Beckel? Oh yeah, I'll play Beckel's testimony. Have a listen. And you tell me what you make of it, if you can be bothered.
This is an extremely abridged version. You want the rest of this news at 11. So I'm in my apartment, minding my own business, washing dishes, and then one day, bam, out of nowhere, God just brings absolute terror into my soul with the passages, Matthew 7, verses 21 to 23. So here I am all my life thinking that I'm good to go. Why? Because I almost became a Mormon, talked to some Mormons last week, and they showed me the way. Okay, they believe in Jesus, so the Jehovah's Witnesses, blah, blah, blah. Okay, So yeah, I'm good to go. But then God said, nope, that's not it. And I wasn't even looking for God. He came to me and brought absolute terror in my soul. And then from then on, the rest is history. That's the abridged version. So I don't understand how you want right there.
Right, I think that's it for this morning. I've got some things I want to read and stuff. I'll put this little landscape image up there, and I'll play my outro, and then I'm gone. Unless somebody wants to make a comment. I promise you, I'm not waiting to put you on a list. I'll give it a couple of minutes, and then that's it. In fact, I might play this one for once. That one, not that one. This one. Bye. Oh, I said I'd give it a couple of minutes. Why not? Nobody wants to come in anyway, I'm not bothered.